Welcome to Terror in Tandem, a podcast about finding entertainment in the macabre. Hosted by the knowledgeable and lovable Laura and Richard Mathiasen. Each episode we discuss the horror genre, from books to film to TV and beyond. Sometimes even from the beyond. You can find us on YouTube at Terror in Tandem, on Instagram at Terror in Tandem, and you'll always find our latest episode on our website, terrorintandem.com.
Oh, you sure will.
Happy middle of the month.
Happy middle of the month, everybody. Happy month middle.
It's not quite the middle, but we're almost there.
Happy just almost on the middle.
To nearly the ending of the month and the year.
Let's just say you're not at the sternum. You're closer to the left nipple than the right nipple right now, but we're almost on the right nipple side of December.
At the, I don't know, pancreas? Or is that too low?
I was thinking around anyway. Welcome to Terror in Tandem, we did that. So, what is going on? Well, it's rainy. It's weird because it's like cold one day and then 30 degrees warmer the next day. Snowing, then freezing, and then raining, and then snowing.
Just depends on where you are. I mean, you basically explained the entire weather patterns of
but like this
country.
Is all happening in our local hang.
Yeah.
You know?
It is.
Winter's here, folks.
It is here.
Krampus is nigh. And I'm here to tell you it doesn't matter if you've been good or bad. You're all being punished.
Yeah.
That's just how Krampus works.
Mm-hmm.
And you deserve it. So today, given the winteriness of the winter.
Oh, yeah. We're going cold. We're going Arctic. We're going Antarctic.
In one version.
Yeah. My aunt and Uncle Arctic are coming.
Yes. And in another version, we're doing the North Pole. And yes, of course, we are doing a classic remake of 1951's The Thing from Another World and 1952's...
No.
1982's The Thing.
The best.
Yes. So
it's one of this terror host's favorite movies.
It's
one of this terror host's favorite John Carpenter movies.
It's both of ours. Both. I had a life before
one of
you.
This terror hosts.
I had a whole life before I met you. So let's just jump into the first one. We're talking 1951's The Thing from Another World. And now this is a movie that I have been hearing about my whole life. All the boomers that...
Not just boomers, all these famous horror directors.
Yes. Well, I was going to say the boomers that raised me love this movie.
They find it to be scary. Roger Ebert was panicked and scared.
Yes, and the boomer film critics and boomer directors, I'm sensing a common theme. Basically, anybody who saw this movie when they were a child reveres this movie. So I was really, really looking forward to getting into Christian Nyby's
and Howard Hawks.
Well,
there's controversy
we'll get
there.
into that. The Thing from Another World. Now, of course, this was produced by legendary crazy man Howard Winchester Hawks. Now, there is a lot of story that he ghost directed this, that he basically took over from old Nyby. And
half the people say he did, and half the people say that he just kind of guided.
I mean, there's a lot. It's the same conversation you hear between Joe Dante and Steven Spielberg regarding Poltergeist.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Sometimes directors do take over. Like in Rogue One, Gareth Evans basically got canned after finishing the movie, and Tony Gilroy came in, although they said he was just doing reshoots. He reshot the entire movie. So anyway, that's neither here nor there.
What is here?
The original movie is something I've been hearing about a lot. I've never seen it. Had you seen this? No. So co-host and I decided to snuggle down and watch this wintry tale. And folks,
we laughed and laughed.
I gotta say.
Sorry, everyone.
Yikes.
Have you, everybody that thought it was super scary,
have you seen it recently? Yes. Have you, nostalgia mainlining elderly folks, watched this movie since you were like 11?
Here's the thing. Things are just way more scary. I've seen things that are much more fright-inducing. And so maybe in 1951, there weren't many.
Stop you right there. Absolutely not. No. I refuse to subscribe to the absolutely lazy nonsense argument. It's just different back then. There were terrifying movies made well before 1951, made at the same time as Thing from Another World. I mean, this is the same era as Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which is way scarier than this movie.
Scarier.
If we're talking scary movies, Nosferatu came out 30 plus years before this, 30 years before this, 29, and it was way scarier. Jacques Tournier's Curse of the Demon came out a couple years later. Way scarier.
We
This
weren't
is just
scared
not-
by it, bottom line.
Well, the thing is, and it's not because it's a product of its era or the Hays Code or anything like that. There is zero tension in this movie.
No
None.
tension.
And that is a direct result of the acting choices. So
and the honestly, the directing choices.
let's
So
get into, let's start at the beginning.
I want to talk about Howard Hawks really quick.
Go for it.
Just
I mean,
in
there's
case
you
people
could do
don't-
an entire goddamn podcast
Just
on
to
Howard
get
Hawks.
level set with people.
Now we're
Howard
talking
Hawks
the-
made a name for himself in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, mostly with westerns and some noir comedy films. He made Scarface.
Yes, I was going to say noir comedy. He also did The Big Sleep.
He made His Girl Friday.
Yeah.
He did The Big Sleep. He did Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
Only Angels Have Wings.
So he has a very
And Rio
unique-
Bravo with old Marion Bradley himself.
He has a unique directing style. And this, I would argue, isn't it.
Marion Morrison. That was his name.
But, he made this black and white science fiction horror B film with Christian Nyby, who I don't know anything about and couldn't really find much about.
Yeah. So enough about that. The good. Let's talk about some good stuff. Now,
Well, it's starring. Don't
Yes.
you want to say who's in it?
I'm really jumping ahead.
You really are. You're
Slowing
like
down
really
now.
excited to talk about this.
Slowing down now.
So it's starring Kenneth Tobey, Meredith Sheridan, which I read a lot about Meredith Sheridan while researching this, and she was supposed to be this really incredible up-and-comer. She's, first of
Yeah.
all, she's beautiful.
There
Was signed on by Howard Hawks to do 5 years.
Yeah.
And instead, she, as they say, fell pregnant and decided to be a mother and homemaker. So she completely left Hollywood.
Well, here's the thing. You ever see The Godfather? You remember when the movie producer is talking about how Johnny Fontaine will never get that picture at
Yeah.
the beginning of the movie? Well, one of the things the reason Johnny Fontaine will never get that picture is because he's telling a story about a beautiful young starlet that he has brought up from nothing and has been training and grooming and teaching and fucking for years, and she's finally about to have her big break when she falls in love with Johnny Fontaine, and she's ruined, in
Yeah.
his words. So, yeah, stuff like that kind of happened and continues to.
So
Movies.
James Arness, who was most known for Gunsmoke, I believe he was in almost the entirety of Gunsmoke, like something like almost 600 episodes.
Yeah.
He played the Thing.
He sure did.
And he was extremely embarrassed by this role. He hated it, and he didn't even go to the premiere.
Well,
because
he didn't have much to do except burst through a door twice and go, "Mrrr," and then get melted. Oh, he pushes somebody. It's a very scary push.
It's partially filmed in Glacier National Park.
That is one of the pros of this, is the outdoor photography, the on-location shooting is pretty fucking magnificent.
And also at a LA ice storage plant. And the latter was used to show the actor's breath in the cold interior shots. And it was the one special effect that Hollywood has never successfully accomplished.
Yeah, I want to give it up to the actors who absolutely suffered to make this movie. Not only were they shooting on snowy days in Montana, but their indoor scenes were in meat lockers. And, when you see that steam coming out of their mouths, that's because everyone there is freezing. I hate CGI moisture to simulate cold. It never looks good. And every time I see it, I just always think, oh, you bitch ass actors. I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio wasn't using that when he was like method acting his way into hypothermia.
The crew at the South Pole Telescope Station have a tradition of watching this film every winter, followed by its 2 adaptations. So The Thing and that 2011 remake.
Yeah,
of The Thing.
the 2011 one, I just recently watched that. It's another one of those why
Yeah.
does this exist? Why is this here? There's nothing memorable about it. It's completely flat, and it just happens. There's one pretty cool death, but that's it. But we're not talking about that. So The Thing from Another World.
So why did this get made, really?
It was a short story
Yes.
called Who Goes There?
And based on the scientific advancements that were happening, alleged UFO sightings, the public started to get really paranoid about foreign invaders from another world. So this is kind of a reflection of the group fear of an invasion. So this is like based on community fear. I'm going to make this movie.
It's extremely a sign of the post-World War II, early Cold War, the dawn of the atomic age. There's the paranoia and the fear of new technology that has not quite been explained to the public, but the public does know one thing about it. It can end the world. And we've never had that before. So this is very much a movie of scientists gone wild and, steady, solid American military men making the right decisions. And
John W. Campbell's novella, Who Goes There, from 1938, was about a shape-shifting alien creature stalking characters stationed at an Antarctic research outpost. So I'm laying that groundwork because that is the essential through line of both The Thing from Another World and The Thing in 1982.
So let's get into it. The story behind this, the basic plot of the movie is there's a scientific research team at the North Pole, and they need some supplies and whatnot. So about 20 fucking Air Force guys load up onto a plane and fly up there, and they find that there's been a discovery. There's something in the ice. Something has fallen out of the sky, and it's not a meteor because it changes course, and meteors don't change course. So they go out, and this is where the movie starts to lose me a little bit, folks. They go out to where the flying saucer is, and it's a magnificent exterior shot at Glacier National Park. It's really cool. It's an amazing shot. So they set up thermite charges
and
around.
One of the more famous scenes of the movie, too.
Yes, yeah, it's an awesome scene. Except these guys, they set up thermite charges on the ice to melt the ice. Then they blow them up.
Well, first they stand in a circle.
Well, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's a very significant scene. And it's a very significant scene for John Carpenter, which I'll get into when we start talking about his thing.
So,
sorry.
To measure they're looking at the ice and they see this saucer underneath the ice. So they form a human circle and they walk in an expanding radius, expanding the circle until they stop to see how big it is. And it's a very cool moment where you see the scale.
And there's probably about 15 of these.
Yeah, there's a lot of people
scientists
out there.
A
lot of people.
Army men. And that is going to be kind of a plot point of this group of men in various configurations throughout the entire film.
So the thing is they line up thermite charges to blow the ice. Now, these are scientists and Air Force, airmen.
Pilots.
These are professionals, and they say that they've done this a bunch of times. So they blow the charges, and the whole fucking ship explodes. The greatest discovery in the history of mankind, and a bunch of grunts blow it up with thermite. Now, their reaction to this is they laugh about it and tell a bunch of jokes and go, oh, well. But
they never take it serious.
No.
And from the beginning of the film, when they're in Anchorage and a reporter is with a bunch of Air Force pilots having drinks, he says, I'm in search of a story and heard about this weird call coming coming from that remote scientific outpost. So he basically is in this with them. So there's no classification of information because this reporter is seeing everything.
Yeah, which, sure, that's how the Air Force works, right? But yeah, so they blow up the greatest discovery of all mankind, but they find a body in the ice. They take the body back with them, and they put a guard on it. Now, this is where the classic scientist versus military comes in. Now, the scientists want to study the thing and, oh, God, you shouldn't do that. They're the evil ones.
Led by Dr. Carrington, played by Robert O. Cornwaith.
Let's stop for a second here and talk about Dr. Carrington. Now, everybody in this movie on the scientific side is dressed like a 1950s scientist. They have pipes, they have, sweaters and suits. All of the airmen are dressed like airmen. Now, here's Dr. what?
Carrington.
Dr. Carrington wearing a turtleneck sweater, a nautical blazer with a little logo on it, making him look right out of Scientology.
And wide gray twill pants.
Yes, and he is fabulous.
They age him up because this actor is only in his 30s.
They did age him up.
He's meant to look like he's in his late 50s.
And there are other actors playing their own age who are just the result of 1950s face. Like the reporter guy is 41 years old, and my God. Anyway,
Dr. Carrington is known as the madman biologist.
So here's the thing about Dr. Carrington, though. He is as gay as a day in May. This is in 1951, where the Hays Code was all over film, so you couldn't have anything as ungodly as a gay man on screen, but you absolutely could. You just had to not call, obvious attention to it. So instead of saying, hello, I'm a homosexual, they dress this guy up like Liberace's fucking twin brother, and they just have him sort of traipsing around, and no one mentions anything, and it's just very jarring that...
Well, that's another thing about this movie, I will say, is that this movie was filled with sexual innuendo.
Oh my God.
Overt sexuality.
This is the horniest movie I have ever seen in my life.
There is an affair between Margaret and the lead captain.
Yeah. Quick aside, I, in watching this movie, came to the conclusion that Margaret's only job at a remote research station at the fucking North Pole is secretary. They have a secretary at a research station.
She wasn't very good at taking notes.
No, she was really bad at it. But also, fellas, you can't write your own shit down. And she's dressed like she's not dressed for the Arctic. She's dressed like, His Girl Friday, like that kind of shit.
And she didn't write anything down. That's another thing. It's not even that anybody wrote it down.
She's not good at the one job.
This actor who played Dr. Carrington was also Dr. Shelby in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Just
nice.
A
Damn.
decade later. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
So he was very popped around.
But the thing is this is there's no subtlety here. It's science is evil because eggheads and smart people bad. American
and brutality.
Yeah.
It's brutality is the winner.
Yeah. American soldiers good. American military might good.
And the thing is that the biologist is trying to understand its biology.
Yeah.
He kind of takes a piece and grows. There's a hand. He finds out it's like a carrot. It's a carrot man.
So here's a typical exchange. Hey doctor, what do you think this is? Well, I'll have to study it further. God damn it, we don't do things like that. Blow it the fuck up.
Well, the dialogue is really dense. And I don't mean I'm dumb and I can't understand it. It's dialogue heavy for a thriller.
It's that 1940s newsman style. So it's like, hey, see, you got to go down here and go into the room where the monster is, see?
And it's really unrepentantly pro-military and anti-science.
It's really weird. So...
And the ending...
I get it, fellas. I get it.
Yeah. The ending also holds true to that. Also, what I do want to point out, not only was this an extremely sexually and innuendo film, no one in the military, at least, I would say the biologist did, the scientist did to a certain extent, but nobody else, including the reporter until the end, took this seriously.
None of it.
People
None of it.
were like smiling and laughing,
cracking jokes. So this was like a competition to see like who could be more clever, because everything was just clever and sardonic, and they would just make crack jokes and crack wise. Now this is after they blew up the spaceship. Oh, here's how the frozen alien gets
I was
loose.
just
By
gonna
the way,
say that.
So you think the frozen alien gets loose because it breaks loose or whatever? No, Private Goober.
Didn't want to look at it.
Didn't want to look at it, so he took his electric blanket that was keeping him warm and put it on the block of ice.
And it melted in minutes.
And melted the ice. And yeah.
And we never really see the thing until maybe like a half a scene, and then the scene towards the end.
It just looks like a guy with long nails and hydrocephaly.
Yeah, it's not very frightening, and he moves very slow. He seems to understand the scientist.
Now, if Fritz Lang could create Metropolis 30 years before this movie, don't tell me that, it was the 50s and special effects were bad.
Like, he's wearing clothes, everybody. Where did the clothes come from? He's wearing people clothes.
He's wearing
clothes.
like a utility suit. He's
never wearing
explained.
shoes. He's wearing like winter boots.
Also, he's got 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth. Like he's a human. He just looks like a slightly janky person.
Yeah, like a Frankenstein's monster type.
Yes, he moves like Boris Karloff, and it's they've just spent the whole movie talking about how this thing is like the most advanced intelligence,
but never
ever.
Are they scared.
And it like slow stumbles into the most obvious trap.
But they're not scared. That's the whole point.
No one is scared.
Why there's no tension in this movie.
Nobody
yells. Takes this seriously. There's no ominous music. There's no worrying stares.
There's nothing wrong with this.
The secretary is in the hallway when they electrocute this guy for 20 minutes.
Yeah, the secretary's there for the boss fight for some reason.
And she's just cracking
and she
up.
Doesn't
She's
take
just like,
notes.
I hope that you guys are fine.
And then at the end, they're planning like dates with each other.
Isn't this a kick, you guys? Here, who wants coffee? I brought 2 mugs for 40 men.
So let's get right into that. There are like 20-something people at the science station already, and the Air Force brings like an additional 15 people. They're all crammed into the cargo plane, like on top of each other. They are all over each other. This movie, in every scene of this movie, there are 50 fucking people in it. There are men everywhere. Every time they run from one room
as a unit.
Yes, every time they run from one room to another, it's 15 guys running together.
Whose decision is that?
I don't know. They all did everything together. It was like Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Like they all went to brunch together. Every scene, it's all of them running together.
It was going from one clown car to another.
It was insane.
You had to wait for everybody to and the thing is, these shots are tight. I mean, they're not tight up in the face.
It's not like a crowd scene.
But you basically are all
in a room.
It's as if everybody's like, okay, everybody crowd together, we're going to take your picture.
Yes, and
that's every single speaking
There
scene.
were multiple scenes where they had to wait for everyone to pile into the room before they start. Yes. And come on. I do not understand. I am convinced that anyone who looks fondly at this movie saw it as a kid and just hasn't gone back to it.
You
and
really need to go back and watch the clunky
nostalgia brain.
You need to watch the clunkiness of how each scene transitions to the next, and each person.
Gonna lay it out there. This movie sucks. It's lazy.
Well, we don't like to.
No,
really...
I know, but listen, it is lazy. It's insulting. It's propagandistic. It is so like weirdly homoerotic, but never addressing that. These men, some of them in their scenes look like they are moments away from fucking each other. The way they talk.
This one, I don't know.
But that's never addressed.
He's just a sergeant, right? And he's very handsome and young. And every time he talks to the captain, he stares at the captain's mouth while he talks. He licks his own lips.
Oh my God.
His eyes twinkle.
It was
like
so,
legitimately twinkle.
It was so frustrating.
That's the biggest tension in this movie, is the sexual tension.
Frustrating to watch this movie and not see one of these guys just lay one on another one. Like I'm like, what are you waiting for? There's 30 of you here. You're all horny as hell for each other.
And also the cold. The only time I ever did feel cold was when they were in apparently the LA ice.
Yeah, because the actors were cold. And they started to act like they were freezing because they really were. But there were scenes in the beginning of the movie where they're walking through blizzards. They're saying
it's 40 below, God. And they're like, break that window. And they break a window.
The reporter came in from 40 below weather in the first scene. He was wearing
a New York tan long wool coat.
He was wearing a pea coat and a fedora.
Not a pea coat. It's the long.
Whatever.
It's but like what New York businessmen wear.
Yeah, like a cashmere coat and a fedora. A fedora.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, it's 40 degrees below.
Nobody had anything on their face. No frozen eyelashes.
There was no
blue
gear.
Lips.
There was no equipment. Nothing. It was, the cold plays such an important, vital role in the remake.
Well, we're supposed to believe that this is taking place in the Arctic.
Yeah, anything that wasn't shot outside looked like it was on a soundstage.
Yeah, it did not have any believability on place.
And nobody really, through their acting, properly conveyed that it was deadly cold outside. Like, you just never believe it. You never do.
And like I said, my biggest frustration with this film was, there's a few. One, there's no tension. Two, there were no believable, fear-induced thoughts. There's nobody talking about how serious they should be taking this. Or like, what a discovery. Or what are we going to tell the public? Or what am I going to tell my kids?
Nobody has a moment of like, does God exist? Or like anything. Just like no one's floored by this. They're just like, oh, that's a saucer, all right.
And the third thing is the cluster of minimum of 8, maximum of 15 people moving as one unit from scene to scene to scene.
So the other thing is you get through like 90 minutes of these boneheads fucking around and making the worst mistakes. The sequel to this should be all of them being court-martialed and like thrown in jail. But they get through this like, they're joking around and farting around and fucking everything up, and then at the end of the movie the news guy sits down to like give a monologue into the microphone where it is like Orson Welles just like,
look to the skies
and look to the skies and we are not alone and blah. It's very like poetic and like it's like the John Philip Sousa of speeches. It's like a bullshit jingoistic America speech, and he just gives it into the mic to nobody, and you're like, wait, so now you're taking this shit seriously? Like,
well, he was talking to his newsroom.
It was
to publish the story.
Yeah, but just the tonal shift at the end of like, yeah, I don't believe any of that because you said this was the greatest threat to mankind, but you melted it with like some electricity.
And he passed out at the end.
Yeah.
Of the kill.
Oh, that's the other thing. Yeah, the newsman gets through saying that he's tough enough for this because he was at Okinawa, but then he passes out when they nuke the alien. Now, here's the thing.
They didn't nuke him. They just electrocuted
Whatever.
him.
When they electrocute him and boil him down, if you really were a veteran at the Battle of Okinawa, you're definitely not fainting. Like, you've seen things that are unimaginable to humans. So, like, to casually throw that out there and then have him bitch out like that, it's just, I don't know. There was so much about this movie that was like, it was written by people that I don't think ever left their room.
It was just a mess, and it wasn't scary.
I hated it.
I don't know what to say. I know we aren't usually negative like
and
this.
And I really wasn't expecting that because everybody loves this movie.
And honestly, this is one of John Carpenter's most inspiring movies. That made him inspired to be a director. And
now, there are a couple things in here. What I most noticed, aside from The Thing 1982, was Alien. Like this movie,
yeah, Ridley Scott also cites this as one of his most inspiring movies.
The Geiger counter that they use as a sort of makeshift motion detector to mark the alien, that is 100% stolen in Alien. It even flashes with a light like the motion detector in Alien. The corridors, the tight corridors, moving through things like that, that was all taken in Alien, just done well. I'm not saying there weren't good ideas here. It was done with such a casual hand. It didn't feel like anybody really put any thought into it. And contrast that to Don Siegel's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, comes out just a couple years later. What a meticulously crafted, tight thriller that is.
Yeah.
So it's really not, it's just a matter of the times. This is just not a good movie.
I would urge people to really go back and watch this. And maybe like there are cinematic elements to it that I'm not, I don't know.
This movie
nuanced enough to appreciate.
It's all about Dr. Carrington,
but
baby.
I'm talking
and his
about tension,
fabulous pants,
and fear, and taking this serious, and really being a reflection of the fears of the, like Americans or the world at the time. And I didn't get any of that.
No. I mean, if you want to watch a movie with your racist grandpa about how America's the best and anyone with an IQ is stupid and dangerous, then this is good, I guess.
I mean, you can watch it, but we are giving our opinions on.
There's a Chinese guy in it.
Too.
He's the
uncredited.
Cook. He's the cook.
So you want to go into the second?
I think we should take a break first and then do that.
You got it.
Now, we all like to dance naked in the moonlight while wearing the cured skin of our victims. But who has the time for the tanning, the seaming, and the cleanup? Not to mention the smell. Friends, allow me to introduce you to Buffalo Bill's Skin Suit Warehouse, the go-to outfitter for the modern serial killer. Revisit the scene of your grisly crimes in a second skin so comfortable you'll swear it was your own. At Buffalo Bill's, every human suit is organically harvested from artisanal kidnap victims, kept starving in a well for several weeks until their skin gets nice and loose. Choose from an assortment of ages, complexions, and skin tone. For the budget conscious, check out our clearance rack of irregular or damaged skin suits, or our amazing Technicolor Dream Coat made from whatever was left in the slop buckets. Miss doing your own harvesting? Well, just send your materials to Buffalo Bill's and we'll tailor any former human shell to your design. Get all the catharsis murder brings your abnormal brain and enjoy a hand-sewn suit without the hassle. Every people suit comes with its own basket of lotion, which should be rubbed on the skin whenever it's told or else it gets the hose again. Buffalo Bill's Skin Suit Warehouse. Put the fucking lotion in the basket. This is a fake ad for a fake product on a horror-themed podcast. We do not condone nor endorse murdering people and using their skin to make clothing. Ooh, okay, enough of that. Let's get into a movie that makes us happy.
Are we biased? Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry. This is just a superior movie.
But I saw this movie when I was younger, and I have seen it 15 times since. I've seen it as recently as this year. So I have gone back and revisited this over and over and over and over, and I'm telling you, it just gets better.
Are there problems with this movie?
No.
100%.
0.
He's full of it.
None.
There are problems with the movie, but we're not going to get into that.
10 out of 10.
So this is 1982's The Thing, directed by the legend John Carpenter, starring Kurt Russell, Wilford Brimley, not even as a young man. I don't think he was ever a young man.
No. Wilford Brimley is as young as he's going to get. No, like in Cocoon, the thing is, he's supposed to be like this super old guy. He was only like in his 50s.
And also starring Keith David. Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Like I said, this is my favorite John Carpenter. And guess what? It's also John Carpenter's favorite John Carpenter.
It also had Donald Moffat in it and his magnificent eyebrows.
The British Antarctic Research Station cites this as a tradition to watch for their midwinter feast.
Hell yeah.
Every June 21st.
Now, this takes place in Antarctica, unlike the original, which was the North Pole.
Right. This score of the movie was done by Ennio Morricone, who won a Razzie for it.
Yeah.
And then he decided to take the unused music from this film and repurpose it for The Hateful Eight, and it won him an Oscar.
Yeah.
So Razzies can suck it.
Oh, the Razzies have always been shit. They are shit. They can eat shit. But this movie, it should be noted, was a box office bomb.
It was, and critically panned.
Critically panned.
Came out the same day as Blade Runner.
I think
also critically
panned and didn't do well. Amazing job, guys. So
it's a cult success.
1982 film critics were really just looking for more of the same. I have a theory that The Thing that critics did not know what to do with it. This was maybe the scariest movie anyone had ever seen. It's one of the most wildly violent, disturbing, fucked up, Lovecraftian nightmare movies. And I think critics, it was too much. I think it was too much for people.
Yeah, like I said, it has had cult success, and ever since has been like widely known as one of the original.
Pretty hard to find
a
a serious horror fan that doesn't put this on their top 10.
It took Kurt Russell 1 full year to grow that beard.
Damn.
Yeah, he was very committed. He was kind of the last choice of this film. There were a lot of people that were considered, and most of them turned it down. The only one who took it serious was Fred Gwynne. He was originally going to be that character, but the studio said that he didn't have enough name recognition.
Fred Gwynne was going to be McReady?
Yeah.
Get the fuck out of here. Fred Gwynne as McReady?
Yeah.
What?
But the studio said no.
Okay. Yeah, you got to go down that road. Yeah. The truck's down the road. I love Fred Gwynne so much. Herman Munster, I love you. I want to see the version. Now, Kurt Russell owns this. There is no McReady that is not Kurt Russell. But
I know. McReady.
Can you fucking...
That's like purposeful, obviously.
Can you imagine Fred Gwynne in this role?
Some of the other people that were considered, Harrison Ford.
That's like makes more sense to me.
Scott Glenn.
Yeah, that would have been cool too. But listen.
But none of them wanted to do this B horror movie.
Kurt Russell is the greatest. And some of Kurt Russell's best output has been with John Carpenter.
Exactly.
Escape from New York, Big Trouble in Little China. I mean, but this is everyone involved's crowning achievement.
So one of the things is this, as I said, that the original thing was a reflection of fear of, invasions from another world. This also was a reflection of the times. John Carpenter made this film to show the toll that one generation's misdeeds was taken out upon the next. And in the 1980s in America, very much was in the conversation of the 50s. And Ronald Reagan had promised the public to make America great again. That's where that phrase comes from.
Actually, and
he was searching for the greatness of the post-war era. And in these ways, John Carpenter said The Thing was something of a perfect storm in a time to make this film because of all of the things and all of the trauma and as a reflection of the times.
Oh, I'm so tired. I'm so tired.
John Carpenter did this a lot, though. He did Assault on Precinct 13.
Yeah,
it's about the fallout from decades worth of racism and bigotry. Halloween.
John Carpenter, George Romero, they were all of the Tobe Hooper. They were all socially very conscious.
Yeah, I mean, Halloween is like the Mike Myers institutionalization and not rehabilitation.
That's why
The Fog is about the residents of Antonio Bay atoning for the sins of their earlier generations. They've put
he's really into he's really into the concept of
generational horror,
generational trauma, and paying for the sins of your ancestors.
So they're not soldiers. Also.
No, that's the big thing. Is these are science folk, and they're not also. Some of them are like engineer types. You know?
And post-Vietnam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're all vets. Mm-hmm. So they're all scarred and damaged.
And they never speak about, which is pretty common, I think, especially for Vietnam era military veterans, is they don't speak about their time in the war. No. But McReady says things like, I don't sleep. Like he has PTSD. You can totally tell. He's a drunk.
Thing. The guys that were really in it, they don't talk about it. The guys that talk about it and wear all the flair and ask for discounts everywhere weren't really in it. So it's such another contrast to like the perfectly coiffed, ready to go, love America and everything is fine airmen from the first movie, who, by the way, they were all World War II vets. So the fact that they had all fought the Japanese and just came out of it with, pomade and a smile on their face is insulting. These guys reflect the trauma of their past. They are broken men.
Why don't you give this? I mean, this film at its like the through line, I would say, is erosion of trust within a small community of people.
So much like the first movie, they find something in the well, actually, in this movie, there is another research station where they had already found something, a Norwegian research station. This comes to them by way of a helicopter chasing a dog and shooting at it.
Yeah.
Now, this happens right at the beginning of the movie. So they save the dog. The helicopter crashes. They go back to the Norwegian station. They find this thing in the eye. It's like all this weird shit, right? So turns out the dog is the thing because this is a real shapeshifter. It can shift into anything. So as the alien busts out of the dog in a
it's
gnarly,
a real shapeshifting.
Yeah.
Just to
really,
reflect the original text.
Rob Botton's effect work on this movie is all-timer. It's just some of the greatest that's ever been done, some of the scariest shit and the most iconic. So it's very Lovecraftian. It's a lot of like spider legs and tentacles and whipping tendrils and nasty blood and viscera. So this thing can disguise itself as any one of these men, and it does. So what that leads to is...
it starts out with, smaller things.
Yep. And then it works its way up to a person. And
Insect,
very
dog, reptile.
slowly they discover things like, someone's discarded uniform with like blood on it. And so they develop tests. And basically these men who are already paranoid and damaged, and most of them are alcoholics, now one of them is a spy that can kill all of them. So the paranoia takes over.
Blood specimen petri dish test.
Now these guys handle it honestly pretty well, but think about how a group of PTSD damaged men in an Antarctic, wasteland, isolated and alone and trapped, would behave.
And it constantly shifts too. That's the thing. That's with a shapeshifter. You test the blood once to determine in the moment. Then 10 minutes later, it could be somebody else.
If two people leave the room and then they come back, one of them is not human anymore. That's the thing, is you can't keep your eye on everybody all the time. You can't trust anybody ever. And these men, they fight each other. They fuck up. They're aggressive. They're very human. They also sacrifice for each other. It's like the best and worst all wrapped up into one. It's very human and honest. And it's also got Kurt Russell and Keith David, so it's bad fucking ass at the same time.
And they do take everything seriously.
Yeah,
from
no
the
kidding.
Start.
From the start, these guys are not messing around. They do things as best you can. I mean, you can't really prepare for what happens to them. But let's get into just the effects work. Now, whereas the original was about as lazy as it could possibly be, even for the time, this is world-class practical effects. For a quote-unquote B movie, the care and attention and artistry put into these monster creations, I mean, it's genius. There's no other word for it. The defibrillator scene, the spider head. These are things that even people who haven't seen the movie.
Like everybody's worst. Forget about the fear of like a shape-shifting being coming and taking over your dog, right? But isn't everybody's fear of when they use a defibrillator on television or whatever is that those paddles are going to go right into somebody's chest?
And that the chest is going to turn into a mouth that bites your hands off?
Well, then that's the horror element.
And then the head detaches and turns into a spider head?
Split head.
Yes. I've been afraid of these things all my life, probably because of this movie.
And also, nothing captures the fucking cold like this film.
Well, it's freezing. The thing about the original movie,
their eyebrows are frozen.
When someone opened the door and went into a room, it's like everything was instantly warm. There was no residual. The rooms were also warm. In this movie, even though they're all inside, they're all still wearing like multiple layers and long johns.
Yeah, it's not
no,
there's
like
no
perfectly
electricity,
insulated.
Perfect 70-degree temperature.
Yes, it's heated. Yes, there are generators, but you're still in the Arctic and you're still opening and closing doors, so there's going to be a draft and cold and chills. In the 50s movie, they were all walking around in their t-shirts and shit, just hanging out. In this movie, it looks cold, and when they step outside and they spend any amount of time outside, they come back in like mostly dead.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
And it's pretty amazing.
It
It
takes a small environment and makes it even smaller because you might
so,
as well be in outer space.
Yeah, it's so isolated. It's so desolate. Yeah, you could be on a planet.
And,
a frozen
somebody
planet.
banging at the door being like, let me in, let me in. Well, what if that's the thing?
Yeah.
And it is very cool. It's super graphic and scary. The relationships between these men is so raw and authentic, and they don't always do well, and they don't always make the right choice.
There's no happy resolution.
No, it's a classic John Carpenter bummer ending.
Yeah, it really is.
It's it's also a very existential ending. It's you're just at the end. What are you really left with? At the end of it all.
It calls back to the Norwegian footage, which I'm going to talk about a little bit in the similarity section, but it's kind of full circle. It just keeps repeating.
So the
whole idea is that somebody's going to discover some of this shit.
This story, this version of it, really sets up this alien as a threat. It shows you not just it's not that it's evil. It's just that its way of assimilating people is so horrific and damaging to the host. Now, there's a really wonderful short story that's written as a sequel to this that goes into the mentality of the alien and seeing it doesn't really see what it's doing as wrong. And that's not addressed in the movie.
No, that's adapting
you
to
don't
your
ever
environment.
You never get the any sort of morality out of this alien. It's just surviving.
The thing is that John Carpenter doesn't explain the alien's motivation. It's really survival and intelligence. You can tell how smart this thing is because of how quick it can shapeshift. Also, the scientists here have no time to really study this because everything's happening so quickly.
Yeah.
And that alone sets the pace.
And they can't really work together with each other.
Pace. I mean, it's probably 24, 48 hours.
Yeah, it takes place over a very short amount of time. The other thing, it was in the original movie, it was really, really hard for me not to root for the alien, considering that it crashed into Earth. They blew up its ship, then hauled it out of the ice, and when it wakes up out of the ice from the electric blanket, the soldier pulls out his gun and fires, empties a clip into it. No hesitation, no nothing, no attempt at communication. He just opens up on it in the most American way possible. So, yeah, obviously it's going to try and kill you guys. All you've tried to do since coming into contact with it is burn it and shoot it. But in the 1982
honestly,
version,
the first one was trying to figure we're taking this to study it.
Yeah.
Even though they had no respect for the biologist. In this movie, they're like, we need to survive.
Yeah. Yeah, in the first movie, they kept getting fragmented messages from the military being like, capture this thing alive and study it. But on the ground, they were like, fuck these scientific egghead nerds. We're not listening to a thing they say.
Yeah.
And it was all just I think Alien, there's a lot of that too, where they're like, capture it and use it as a bioweapon. Instead of, blow it out a fucking airlock.
So, I mean, we could talk about the 1982 thing, but I just want to get into the similarities.
For those of you that haven't seen it, see it.
It's the similarities of both and then the differences. So,
and fuck the Razzies. Ennio Morricone is a goddamn
I think it's
treasure.
funny that he repurposed what he got panned for, but and was like, oh yeah, you think this
the main score from the thing is on my writing playlist. It's incredible. It's like a classic lo-fi,
I think it's the
minimalism.
Ultimate, fuck you though.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I won an Oscar for it. But so a Razzie, whatever. I won an Oscar.
Imagine the balls it takes, or lack of awareness, to be like, hi, I'm just some random dork doing a fake award ceremony, and I'm gonna, you know what? Fuck Ennio Morricone. What?
Yeah.
It's like walking up to Rembrandt and being like, what's up, bitch? Just some respect, please.
It's like telling an Italian that the best Italian food in America is the Olive Garden. Just speaking of Ennio Morricone, I'm just trying to.
When you said that, a little part of me died. Ooh.
So when John Carpenter remade The Thing, he shortened the title, obviously.
Not The Thing from Another World.
And he went back to the source material. And again, we talked about the plot is similar, like the very general plot. And the Norwegian footage at the beginning of the 1982 thing is shot in black and white and is deliberately calling back to the thing from another world.
Oh, yeah.
In the circle, they're standing around.
Yep. It's
ship.
got that awesome shot, and it's also the square framing from like the old. Yeah.
John Carpenter also sneaks this film, the original thing from another world, in Halloween. Laurie Strode and her friends are watching it when she's babysitting.
They certainly
It's on the
are.
TV. So he really does love this movie.
And that's great, John. You saw this when you were a kid. It made a big impression on you. I saw The Gate when I was a kid, and it made a big impression on me. And then I watched it as an adult and went, oh, right. I was a kid when I saw this.
So some
Stephen
of the
Dorff.
visuals, the title design is this exact same.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's really cool.
That sort of like tearing and then the light bleeding into it. It's very
interesting
neat.
you say tearing and light bleeding into it, because I believe I read that the way they created this title was to burn a piece of paper with a light source underneath it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. We both yelled at the same time because the title card is the same. It's exactly the same.
It's great.
Mm.
Another similarity is that the alien begins its invasion with the dogs, with the huskies.
Yeah.
First before humans.
Oh, yeah. In the original, it fucks up a couple dogs. It's kind of sad.
It is sad.
But they bite off one of its arms. Good boys. And speaking of the dogs, in the remake, there is a man who takes care of them, is in charge of them, and loves them very, very much, and keeps them indoors and warm. And in the original, they are left outside, tied up in a fucking blizzard at the North Pole. So, fuck you guys.
So the atomic dread of the 50s versus the Cold War paranoia of the 80s is kind of a similar, social vibe, I think. So
Yeah.
that's a similarity.
Those damn Ruskies.
Playing off the fears of society, I think, is a similarity.
Well, I mean, what have we always been afraid of as a people? Each other.
Well,
we're afraid of each
especially
other.
more and more.
Well, no, always. We're always afraid of each other.
The thing from another world ends with the protagonist overcoming the thing character.
And getting the goyle.
But Carpenter's film shows the initial team being entirely destroyed. So I think he's saying that, like, a generational commentary on that. I don't know.
I mean, the original movie ends in the most like 50s Hollywood way. America wins, everything's fine, and the guy gets laid. The remake ends with, a downer and also a little bit of a question mark.
Yeah.
Did they really kill it? Not sure.
No.
But
somebody's going to discover that stuff. Just like they discovered the Norwegian stuff. Somebody's going to...
Yeah. Come on by and start the whole thing over again.
So just some of the differences is with the actual dogs themselves. The Malamute actually is the dog as opposed to huskies in the original.
Okay.
The Malamutes in the thing. When the American team sees the Norwegians in pursuit of the dog, they don't understand what's happening.
Yeah, it's just
And
a guy
instead
shooting at a dog.
They try to they save the dog instead, and they take the dog in. So they interfere in that way. So that's kind of how things kick off in the remake.
Yeah, it's kind of like the end of The Omen when he's trying to kill the Antichrist, and the cops are like, "Stop!" He's like, you don't understand.
And we did talk about how, like, they're really trying to figure this out in the remake. They do, I think, believe that it's they in the original it's definitely a plant-based creature. It's like a carrot creature.
They specifically call it a carrot.
And in this remake, they really don't even have the chance to discover what it is. They just know that it's like a cellular
that's the other thing is
mutation.
So you went out of your way to categorize this thing as a carrot. How afraid am I supposed to be of it again?
Right. Why couldn't you call
Could you-
it by its scientific name of a carrot?
Hey,
you know what I mean?
Hey, screenwriter.
Like
is there anything more
cordyceps instead of calling it a mushroom?
Yeah, anything more intimidating you could use than carrot?
And also the science versus military being the central tension or antagonist.
There's a little
in the
bit
original.
of that in the remake of more like...
This one is more paranoia, though.
Yeah,
This one is
but it's
paranoia.
There's a
as the
little bit of we need to
antagonist.
study this thing, but it's less like I am a crazy scientist who will kill the world to study this. It's more like one team wants to burn it for safety and the other team wants to study it and then burn it for safety.
Yeah.
That's the conflict. It's not so much in the original movie. It's that very lazy, stupid, and unfortunately we see it all the time thing of, oh, well, if you're an expert in something, you must be an insane, crazy megalomaniac, or maybe just an expert.
Yeah. So, origin, tone, pacing, attitude, and theme and ending. Those are all the differences in the two films.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, key difference, one of them is good.
But as you mentioned, the ending, you mentioned the end.
Yeah.
Childs and McGready are the only ones left alive in the remake, and they can't trust each other. They really can't survive the storm that they're in without shelter, and that's sort of left to the viewer to come to terms with. The original, it's like they destroy the alien, everything's fine, and the male lead goes to bed with the female lead.
Yeah. And she's really game. I mean, there's a scene where they go off alone together, and in the next scene, he's tied to a chair while she's feeding him drinks, and it's the horniest...
His hands are tied behind his back on a chair, and she is feeding him drinks.
It is extremely weird and extremely horny, and then he just gets
back
out.
To business back to normal.
They don't
they get up. And,
yeah, like they don't fuck after that. It's just she ties him to a chair for a few minutes, and they have a couple drinks, and then like everyone keeps their clothes on, and you're like, what? Is this just how people like pass the time? What is that?
Yeah.
It's a weird movie, and I didn't like it. I just don't come at me with your pro-military, anti-science jingoism. I am tired of it. It gave me the same feeling I get when I accidentally watch a little bit of a football game, and all of a sudden I'm like, why are there military jets flying above? And why is there a military band playing at the halftime show? Why is there so much military at this sports game?
Why are there so many ambulances in the parking lot?
And you know why. You know why. And that's kind of the same feeling I got from watching this movie in 1951, which is just like, all right, I get it.
But we helped you skip over an entire generation's fear center.
I was really bummed out because I really wanted to like this. I love atomic era paranoid sci-fi horror, like fucking Twilight Zone. That is incredible. Them is an incredible movie. The Giant Ants. This just didn't.
The Birds. I don't know.
That's 1960s, but
still very close.
I really love the 50s era of science gone amok, of the fears of the atomic age, of Godzilla came out of this era.
This just wasn't a serious movie, and I can't take it serious.
No, it felt like everybody making it was like, look at this dumb fucking thing we're making. Anyway.
Well, we hope you enjoyed our remake.
Oh, The Thing 1982, just the best. Watch it.
Sorry,
then
we're
watch it again.
biased. We already said that.
Then buy it so you can keep watching it.
Yes.
Over and over.
And stay warm out there.
Oh, coming up soon.
I gotta go feed the dog right now.
Go. Is that still the dog? We have some special episodes coming up soon to mark the end of the year.
We do. Keep listening, everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Terror in Tandem is written, produced, and recorded by Laura and Richard Mathiasen, and edited and mixed by Richard Mathiasen. Our theme was written and performed by Carrie Denver, and all other music was written and performed by David Suspanic. All opinions expressed on this podcast are our own and should be taken as such. Thanks for listening, and please remember to give us a like, a review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. We're static.